I work the late night closing shift at my local neighborhood bubble tea store. It's not a difficult job per se, just sometimes it gets a little hectic, especially when a bunch of people come in all at once and order. That always gets me flustered. I get so anxious that I might get someone's order wrong. Anyhow, I was closing shop the other day with my friend Vic. This was maybe 2 weeks ago. We had just cleaned up, counted cash, and turned off all the machinery. We locked up the place, waved goodbye, and went to our cars in the parking lot. Only a handful of cars remained, likely from all the other workers in our plaza who were also in the process of closing up. Our plaza was basically a giant square with shops forming the perimeter and the parking lot taking up the center. Like any other day, I started my car and started to drive home. On my way out of the plaza, I saw this strange guy sitting on the curb right by the exit I was taking. He wore massive, baggy clothes and had his hood up so I couldn't make out his face. I didn't think much of him because people do some of the randomest things. It was just all a little creepy and off. That being said, the very next day when I was closing up, that same guy was there, just standing in the parking lot. But he wasn't just loitering around or whatnot. He was standing right next to my car. If I hadn't been closing with another guy that day, I wouldn't know what I would have done. I'm just a 5'5" small Asian girl. There was no way I could tell that guy to back off or whatnot. But luckily, Vic was on shift with me, and he escorted me to my car. That weird guy just kind of stood there the whole time, staring at us. Or at least, I think that's what he did. I couldn't see his face at the angle that he was standing at. After that, I told my manager I couldn't do any more closing shifts, at least for the time being. I told her about the creepy dude that had been there 2 nights in a row. I asked her to at least schedule me with the guy if I had to close. She understood. Unfortunately, that's kind of the average experience being a woman. Everything was fine up until today. My work bestie, Sarah, had asked me to cover her closing shift that night. She was meeting up with the guy she had been talking to from Hinge. She was absolutely raving about him. They had been chatting for a while now, and it was obvious she was really interested in getting to know him. So that's why I came into work tonight. To be fair, I had completely forgotten about that weird guy in the parking lot. I had so much other stuff going on. Who would remember a one-off event like that? Anyways, I was closing with Betty. She was slightly taller than me and generally very nice. We were just about to wrap up for the night when that same weird dude came into the shop. There were 5 or so minutes left before closing. When I saw him, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I instantly recognized him as the guy from before. He slowly shambled forward to the counter. Betty went up to greet him. "Hi, sir, we're closing in 5 minutes. I don't think we'd be able to take your order," she said. I heard her voice quiver a little. No doubt, Betty felt the same way I did about this guy. He just stood there and didn't say a thing. Then he raised a hand and pointed at a drink on our menu.
"I want this one,"
he said. I had never heard this guy's voice before, but it gave me the creeps. I instinctively crossed my arms just from the sound of it. Sorry, sir, we're closed for the night," Betty said again. "Please come again tomorrow. We'd be happy to help." I could hear the uneasiness in her voice as well. He stood there for a moment, as if processing what to do next. Then, he slowly turned and shuffled out of the store. I let out a sigh of relief. "Do you know that guy?" asked Betty. Her voice was shaky and uneven. I could see the fear etched into her eyes. "No, I have no idea who he is," I said. "You know, when he pointed, he was pointing at you," Betty said. I froze. Who was this guy? What did he want? Had he been following me this whole time? These questions raced through my head at 1,000 miles an hour, drowning out all other thoughts. "Do you want to come and lock the front door with me?" asked Betty. "I don't want to get jumped if he's just waiting there." "Yeah, sure," I said. I grabbed the knife we used to chop fruit, just in case. The two of us walked up to the front door, hesitantly. I peered through the window into the black abyss outside. It was very late out, and there was no moon tonight. The clouds had blocked it out. The parking lot lights flickered and illuminated the sparse lot intermittently. We could see no one in the lot. My car was the only car parked out there tonight. Betty quickly locked the door, and we both let out a sigh of relief. "Did you see him out there?" I asked. "No, I think he's gone," Betty said. "Thank God. Hope we never have to deal with that again," I said. We carried out our closing routine as usual, albeit both a bit unnerved by the recent experience. "Okay, you got everything?" I asked. "Yup," Betty replied. "Do you think you could walk me to my car? I'll give you a lift to yours after," I asked. "Of course," Betty said. Betty always preferred to park in the back of the plaza. "Do you think they'll mind if I borrowed this for the night?" I asked Betty, brandishing the small fruit knife I had taken from behind the counter. "I mean, if you told them what's happened, they'll definitely understand," Betty said. We unlocked the front door. We stepped outside and Betty pulled out her copy of the key to lock it. The lights in the plaza flickered faint. It was as if each of the lights were suddenly fading from life, dimming until they barely lit up anything. Betty struggled with the lock. She couldn't see where to put the key because it was so dark. "Michelle, could you give me some light?" Betty asked. I was frantically scanning around us this whole time, looking out for that strange man. I turned to Betty, rummaged through my bag with one hand and clutching the knife in the other. After what felt like an eternity, I pulled out my phone. It was almost dead, but had just enough battery in it to still turn on. "There," I said, shoving my phone in the general direction of the lock. "Thanks." With a few clicks, the front door was locked. When I turned to look around once more, I saw a massive shadow standing behind Betty. I screamed. Betty jumped and turned around. There was nothing there. "Jesus, Michelle, what the hell was that about?" she said. "I thought I saw him standing right behind you," I yelled, terrified. My heart was racing at this point. No, I think maybe I'm just seeing things. Yeah, that's probably it. "Michelle, I know you're terrified, and I am too, but he's not here, nor is he anywhere in the parking lot. We'll be okay," Betty said. We scrambled to our car as quickly as our legs could take us. I unlocked it and we both jumped in, slamming the doors behind us. We both let out a big sigh of relief. "All right, just take me to my car," Betty said. I started the car and drove to the back. By the loading docks of our shop was parked Betty's car. I pulled up right next to it and let Betty out. "Text me when you're home, so that I know you're safe," she said. "You too," I said. The drive home was uneventful. I turned on some of my favorite tunes to calm myself as I drove. Just as I was pulling up into my neighborhood, my music went out. I tapped my phone and realized it had ran out of battery. I didn't have a new charging cable in the car for it because it used USB-C, and I only had one of those cables. All my old cables were USB-A. Darn it, I thought. As I turned the first corner to get to my house, I was greeted with a nasty surprise. Standing just around a corner was that same guy. My heart rate spiked instantly. How did this guy know where I lived? Had he been following me home those previous nights? Maybe if I drove past him quickly enough and made a few false turns, I would be able to throw him off. As I passed him, I could see him staring at my car. His head continued to track my car until I had rounded another corner. Fuck this. I floored it and raced home as fast as I could. When I pulled up into my driveway, I dashed out of my car and practically slammed into the front door. I frantically tried to unlock it, but my nervousness made it hard for me to put the key in. Finally, unlocking the door, I barged in, slammed the door shut, and slumped onto the floor, exhausted from fear. That's when I noticed a pair of shoes attached to baggy pants in my peripheral vision. There he was, standing right in front of me.
Welcome home, Michelle. I've been waiting for you.
Hello, That's the end of our story. If you're still here at this point, you must have enjoyed this story. Consider supporting my channel by subscribing, ringing the notification bell, or sharing this with a friend. Additionally, you can support me on Patreon if you would really love to help me grow my channel. Thank you, and until next time.